libreta para que tomemos notas. Oh, yo ya, en verdad, ya faltan bien poquitas leyes para terminar, pero bueno, pues tenemos pendiente, ¿verdad?, nuestro curso de inglés. Sin embargo, déjenme platicarles que también por ahí ya tengo un curso que es muy importante que tomemos ya. Muy pronto tenemos que estarnos pues metiendo esa información en la cabeza que nos lleva a alcanzar nuestras metas, nuestros sueños más ambiciosos, pero saben que tenemos que estar conectados, bueno, pues con la acción, con todo lo que estamos aprendiendo, hay que ponerlo en acción. Aunque sean pequeñas acciones, tienes que estar poniendo todos los días, por favor, en práctica, ¿sale? Ahora sí, vámonos para allá. La ley de la escalera. Listo. ¿Listas?
The next law that I want to talk to you about is the law of the ladder. And the law of the ladder just simply says character growth determines the height of personal growth. In other words, our character, who we really are, that's going to really determine how high we can really climb. I could still remember back in 2002, in fact, Time magazine called 2002 the Summer of Distrust. That, if you'll think back with me for a moment, that's when all the big companies were just doing bad things. Remember the Enron situation, and people were being abused and misused, and funds were being misused. In fact, there was a poll at the end of that Summer of Distrust of which they asked the American people, do you trust the CEOs to make good moral decisions? And only 3% of America said yes. The Summer of Distress. And so late that summer, Time Warner, that was my publisher at the time, called me up to New York, and I sat down with the head of publishing. We had dinner together, and he said, John, he said, all the things that are happening with all the companies and how they're violating people, he said, somebody's got to write about it. And he said, I've been looking and thinking about who I'd have write, and I looked through my stable of writers, and he said, I want you to write a book on business ethics. I looked at Larry, and I said, wow. I said, I can't do that. We said, why not? He said, you know what's happening? Well, I said, of course I know what's happening. He said, someone needs to write a book on business ethics. And he said, it should be you. You need to write a book on business ethics. I said, I can't do it. We said, I've picked you. I've looked at the whole stable of authors. You're the guy I think that, what do you mean you can't write a book on business? Why can't you write a book on business ethics? I said, it's very simple. There's no such thing as business ethics. There's just ethics. You either got them or you don't. This is not complicated. My name's John. I'm your friend. And I'll never forget, I said, I need about a month, because how can you help people with something like character and trust, especially if they have no foundation, if nothing's right or nothing's wrong? And then, I mean, where do you go with this, and how can you do it? And so I got together with my team, and we batted it around. In fact, I'll never forget, we were in Nashville, Tennessee, and in the afternoon in a hotel room, and all of a sudden we realized we could build a book on the golden rule. Treat others as you want to be treated. Because the golden rule is in every religion, it's in every culture. We did research on it, and so we wrote a book. And by the way, after I told him there's no such thing as business ethics, as soon as I explained that to him and the success ethics, he looked back and said, that's the title. There's no such thing as business ethics. And that's what we took off with. And now I think it's Ethics 101. They've changed the title. But the point very well being, you've got to be bigger on the inside than you're on the outside. And you got to be better on the inside than you are on the outside. You see, when you're better on the inside, that's your character. The outside is your reputation. And in success, you got to be competent and you got to have character. And if you forfeit either one, if you got great character but you don't have any competence, you're not going to be successful. And if you got competence, you don't have any character, you're not going to be successful.
9 en punto.
But when you're better on the inside, your character, than you're on the outside, which is your reputation, over time, you'll become greater on the outside. But the flip is also true. If you're better on the outside, which is your reputation, than you are on the inside, over time, your outside will crumble. That's a fact. So let me give you two or three insights, and then I really want to talk to you about character, because I've got some stuff that I've just been learning and growing in my own life that hopefully will help you. But just let me give you two or three insights on the inside. And number one is that the inside always influences the outside. Let's just start there. And there's a proverb that says, as we think in our heart, so we become. The inside influences and affects the outside. So what happens when we fail to work on our character? People are always asking me what I'm reading. I'm reading a book right now that it's just really making I'm reading it very slow. Because it's making a pretty big impact on me. And it's a book by David Brooks. If you ever watch Sunday morning political talk shows, you'll see him a lot on those. But the book, name of the book is The Road to Character. And I have with me something I'm going to read to you now. I just pulled this out of the book the other day, and it just was so good. The question is, what happens when we fail to work on our character? And here's what, just listen, these aren't my words. These are the words of David Brooks. Years pass, and the deepest parts of yourself go unexplored and unstructured. You're busy, but you have a vague anxiety that your life has not achieved its ultimate meaning or significance. You live with an unconscious boredom, not really loving, not really attached to the moral purposes that give life its worth. Listen to this. You lack the internal criteria to make unshakable commitments. You never develop inner constancy, the integrity that can withstand popular disapproval or a serious blow. You find yourself doing things that other people approve of, whether these are the things that are right or not for you. You foolishly judge others by their abilities, not by their worth. And you do not have a strategy to build character. And without that, not only your inner life, but also your external life will eventually fall to pieces. I believe that with all of my heart. When we decided to teach transformation in nations, we didn't start by transforming the nation. We started with a very simple theme. Transformation begins in me. We're not starting with anyone else. We're starting with me. Transformation begins in me. A few weeks ago, I was in Guatemala. Amazing stories in that country. We're working with transformation now. And I had some time with the Attorney General. The Attorney General is becoming well known in the world right now because she stood up to corruption in that country. In fact, if you watch the news over about 8 months ago, every Saturday, 100,000 people plus would come to the main square in Guatemala and quietly protest the government because it was corrupt. And did it orderly, would give water to the policemen. After the protest was over, they'd spend an hour cleaning everything up, so that it was better off probably when they left it than when they came. But it was the first Latin America country that basically from the grassroots overturned the government. And the story behind that, of course, most of those protesters were people that had gone through our leadership roundtable's values. Most of them had done that, but here's the story as we went to the Attorney General and spent time with her. She said, John, she said, I started taking and reading and participating in roundtables on leadership values. She said, I'm here to tell you, as I kept seeing these values that I needed to have in my life. She said, I was the Attorney General, and she said, by the end of the year, I realized I had to go now and prosecute many leaders in government. So she started with the president, vice president. She said, I have now put over 300 leaders in prison. Her life is in major danger. And I looked at her and I asked her, I said, this has to take a lot of courage. What's been the most difficult part? And I'll never forget, she said, half the people I put in prison were my friends. She said, one person I put in prison for 17 years, we ate together as families every week. Now, what happened to her? What happened to her is as she began to understand values and character, she began to get bigger on the inside. And the inside got so big, it began to affect the outside. And I'm just here to tell you, that's the way it works. The inside influences the outside. And the second insight that I want to give you is that our inside development is totally within our control. The stuff that I'm talking about now, character, this is not something out of my control that somebody else inflicts upon me. It's something that I can control myself. Speaking of Guatemala, just really quickly, I was in, last year, I was in Helsinki, Finland, speaking to 10,000 people, the largest leadership conference in Europe. And while I was there, much to my delight, they had what they call the Landfill Harmonic from Guatemala. And they performed to these 10,000 people, and they have all homemade instruments. And the bottom line is these are all poor kids who live near the big city dump in Guatemala City. And in that process of living near to it, they've taken the junk from the dump and they've made their instruments. And now they're phenomenal musicians, and they've learned music, and they go literally around the world playing, and it's all from the junk of the stuff that was put in the dump. And I love it. Their expression, or their kind of their brand is the fact that they say this: the world gives us garbage, and we give the world back music. And I'm telling you, I've fallen in love with these kids. And when we go to Guatemala, sometimes I'll take my coaches down and I'll bring them in and have them play for them. And it's incredible. This is character. The world gives you garbage, but you give the world back music. You see, I cannot determine what happens to me, but I always can determine what happens in me. That's the inside, the character. And inside victories should precede outside victories. Wow. The inside victories go before the outside victories. And if your character and my character, if it is not strengthening, then your future is weakening. So the teaching I'm about to do for the next 15 minutes is really important. I'm teaching out of my life now, okay? Because when you talk about character, it can be unattainable. I've heard people talk about character, and when I got done hearing them, I thought I'm never going to get there. It's a little high. It's just I don't think I can get there. And so I would like to talk to you about 3 signs of what I call character strengthening. How do I know that I'm strengthening my character? How do I know I'm going the right way and becoming stronger and better on the inside? How do I know that? And there are 3 really simple but definite signals that kind of let us know if we're doing what I call character strengthening. Think of it as working out and going to the gym and every day. There are 3 things, and let me give them to you. Number 1 is humility. When I see a person that has humility, I know that their character is being strengthened. Now, you know my background is I was a pastor for 25 years. So you have to understand, when I started off, I've always been very confident. I've always been pretty competent, to be honest with you. I've got some decent gifts. And I can remember when I started off as a little country pastor, and I was working hard, and this church started really growing good. And I kind of wrestled with God. I'm not trying to if you're not a person of faith, just take a pill, relax for a moment. It's just, I'm just giving you out of my life. I'm not trying to convert you. I'm just telling you my life, okay? And I was wrestling over that thing that where Jesus said, without me, you can do nothing. And I was thinking, oh, you know what? I'm doing quite a few things without him. And I know that sounds extremely arrogant, but I was really, I didn't feel so much arrogant as the fact I just thought, I don't think I buy that statement. So I was making a list of all the stuff, that I was doing, kind of without him. I said, I did this without you, I did this without you. And I wasn't trying to be flippant or arrogant. I'm just working through this. And so I got this whole long list. And then one day I just sensed him talk to me and said, John, oh yeah, you're doing all those things without me, but none of those things are eternal. The stuff that you want to be eternal, you've got to do with me. And I think humility is understanding my place in the light of God and in the light of others. And I think the moment that I have a real sense of understanding where I am in light of who he is and in light of the people around me, wow, it all changes. Now, every day it's very easy now for me to give gratitude for him because I began to understand this. Or as my friend Rick Warren said one time, we were talking, he said, John, humility is not denying your strength. It's just being honest about your weaknesses. And I thought, how good that is. It's not denying that you have gifts. If you got gifts, you got gifts. In fact, don't deny them. God gave them to you. Be proud of them. Work them. Develop them. But it's so you don't deny the things that you do well, but the whole process is that you're just kind of honest about your weaknesses. My assistant, Linda Eggers, is with me today, and Linda's been with us she's been working with me as an assistant for 30 years, okay? So she's been with me a long time. And so I remember a few years ago, I was writing one of my books. I can't remember which one it was, but I was writing a book, and I was writing a chapter on admitting your weaknesses or understanding your weaknesses. And it was kind of a humility thing of being in touch with your weaknesses. So I called Linda on the phone, and I said, Linda, I'm writing this thing on weaknesses, and I'm writing some of them down, but you've been with me for a long time. So would you mind over the next, maybe week, as you think of one of my weaknesses, would you just kind of write it down, and maybe in 5 or 6 days we'll talk, and you'll kind of be able to say, John, you got, 2 or 3 weaknesses. I see the train a-coming. And I'll never forget. She said, I can do that now. And I said, what do you mean? Now? Well, she said, you don't have to wait a week. Here, she got some papers. She said, write them down. I'll give you. Let me give you a list. I said, wait, hold it. That seems a little quick. Don't just kind of assume. She said, I'm not assuming. I know you. You've got a whole list of them. If you got your paper, you got your pen. Here, write them down. I said, I don't know if I want to write them down yet. That's when I realized she didn't need a week. I needed a week. I needed a little time to recover and kind of get over all of these weaknesses. Wow. I love it when I run into people who just think they're amazing and indispensable. So stupid. I've had this for years. It's called the indispensable man. Sometime when you're feeling important, and sometime when your ego's in bloom. Sometime when you take it for granted you're the most important person in the room. Sometimes when you feel that your going would just leave an unfillable hole. Just follow this simple instruction and see how it humbles your soul. Take a bucket and fill it with water. And put your hand in it up to the wrist. Pull it out, and the hole that's remaining is the measure of how much you'll be missed. You may splash all you want when you enter, and you can stir up the water galore, but stop, and you're going to find in a minute that it looks quite the same as before. The moral of this quaint example is to do the best you can, but be proud of yourself. But remember, there's no indispensable man or woman. There's just none of us that are indispensable. And I would just say to you, if you think you're really important, trust me on this. 30 minutes after they buried you, the biggest question is they all have gotten back to some assembled place where the food is where's the potato salad? God, 30 minutes after I'm dead, potato salad's at the top of their minds and their agenda. Humility is just when you see a person really growing in their humility, you can say, okay, their character is strengthening. The second area is authenticity. Authenticity is a genuineness about people. It's being comfortable in your own skin. I can still remember, again, in my 20s, going through this whole process of what I would call my journey to authenticity, trying to get there. And remember, when we're talking about humility, authenticity, I'll give you the third in a moment. We're working on this. We've never arrived. Are you with me? We've never arrived. If somebody comes around like as if they have arrived, they have other issues that are way beyond their problem. Okay, but I can remember when I sat down, and as a pastor, I wrestled with belief, and I made a decision that I would only teach what I believed. That if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't teach it. And as a young leader, I skipped a lot of scripture. Just being honest with you, there were just some things I wasn't ready for. But I said, I've got to believe it. And what I tell you what that did, that gave me passion. Because every time I taught, I was teaching out of my belief. Wasn't teaching out of my knowledge, wasn't teaching out of what I heard. I was teaching out of what I believed. And I also, on this journey of authenticity, I said, I'm not only going to teach what I believe, I'm only going to teach what I experience. I'm not going to teach things that I haven't really discovered on my own. It's not that the fact that it's not true, or it's not the fact that it's not helpful, but I just said, I've got to experience it. And when the moment I did that, that began to give me amazing confidence in my communication. And then I went another step in that journey, and I said, I'm only going to teach what I live. If I don't live it, I'm not going to teach it. And that's when I began to really sense authenticity. Not at any time trying to do, say something that I am not in my life. And I wrote some things down I want you to hear now, so listen carefully. Staying real is one of the most courageous acts that we'll ever fight for. Staying real. To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you everybody but yourself. Wow. So when we begin to talk about character, it's a high standard. And I have a hard time with high standards, not because I think high standards are wrong. I think high standards are right. I have a problem with it because I know humanity. I know me. I know you. I especially know me. And all of a sudden, I came across some thinking about hypocrisy. I think there's a healthy hypocrisy. We never think of healthy hypocrisy as being healthy, do we? We always think of it as being unhealthy. I think there's an unhealthy one. That's one we understand really well. I think there's a healthy hypocrisy, and I think there's an unhealthy hypocrisy. Remember, we're talking about the law of the ladder. We're talking about character. How high are we going to climb? So here's the healthy. Let me give you the healthy hypocrisy, and then let me give you the healthy hypocrisy is this. It's healthy when what I say and what I do, they're not the same. They're not the same. What I say and what I do, they're not the same, but I'm striving to get better. And let me explain it this way. You have a healthy hypocrisy when saying what you say is gaining on what you're doing. You with me? It's healthy. In other words, I haven't arrived there. I'm not perfect, but my saying is getting closer to what I'm doing. It's gaining on it. Hey, a few more years, it'll catch up with what I'm doing. That's a healthy hypocrisy because that's holding a good standard for yourself and saying, I'm getting there, I'm getting there, I'm getting there. And an unhealthy hypocrisy is when what I say and what I do are not the same because I want to look good. That's the killer. I want to look good. See, when I want to look good, everything changes now. Saying is not gaining on doing at all. In fact, saying is getting farther away from doing because I'm wanting to say things that I am not so that I look good in the eyes of others. So you talk about something humbling. When I was 59, I'm 69 now, 10 years ago, I wrote a prayer for myself for 60. In fact, I called it a prayer at 60. And I got it here. And I've looked at this card hundreds of times. I prayed this prayer hundreds of times. In fact, the first year I turned 60, I prayed it every day. And this kind of gives you this idea of a healthy, unhealthy kind of hypocrisy. And just basically, Lord, as I grow older, I would like to be known as available rather than a hard worker, compassionate more than competent, content not driven, generous instead of rich, gentle over being powerful, a listener more than a great communicator, loving versus quick and bright, reliable, not famous, sacrificial instead of successful, self-controlled rather than exciting, thoughtful more than gifted. I want to be a foot washer. I wrote that prayer at 59, and let me tell you something, at 69, I'm still not there. That's very humbling to me. To be honest with you, I thought by the first 6 months of my 60th birthday, I would have arrived. But my saying is gaining on my doing. Hasn't caught up, but it's gaining. It's getting there. You see, the tension of the two natures. There's the character nature, and there's the career nature. And it creates a tremendous tension for us because in the career nature, rightfully so, we have to emphasize and work on our strengths. And that's the right thing to do. We got to work on our strengths because that's how we get better in our career. There's nothing wrong with that. But the tension is I'm over there working on my strengths in career. And do you know how you improve your character? You work on your weaknesses. And I found a long time ago, it's a lot more fun to work on my strengths. Are you with me? Does this make sense to you? It's a lot more fun to work on my strengths than it is for me to work on my weaknesses. And character, if I'm going to strengthen my character, it constantly forces me to work on my weaknesses. And my word of advice to anybody that is in this process is, if you're really wanting to strengthen your character, for many, many years, I had an accountability partner. And my accountability partner had 5 questions to ask me. And when we get together, they ask me these 5 questions. I'm not going to give you those 5 right now. You don't give it all in one session. It's called anticipation. But I will give you the 5th question, because it was always the last one. He'd ask me the 4 questions, and I'd give him answers. And the 5th question, this is me. I love this one. The 5th question was, have you lied to me about the previous 4? And there were times when I'd stop and I'd say, yeah, I did. Yeah. Let's go back to number 2. I lied. I lied. So our road to humility, our road to authenticity, and one more word that I think shows that we're really strengthening our character, and this is so true, is self-respect. Self-respect, when our inner person is being strengthened, we get self-respect. I'm going back, if you'll let me, one more time to The Road to Character and the book that I started off with in this lesson. Because here's what David said. Self-respect is produced by inner triumphs, not by external ones. It can only be learned by a person who has endured some internal temptation, who has confronted their own weaknesses, and who knows, well, if it comes to the worst, I can endure that. I can overcome that. Self-respect is not the same as self-confidence or self-esteem. Self respect is not based on IQ or any mental or physical gifts that help us have a competitive advantage. It's not comparative. It's not earned by being better than other people at something. It is earned by being better than you used to be, by being dependable in times of testing, straight in times of temptation. It emerges in one who is morally dependable. Wow. And here's the challenge we all have: you can't dream your way to character. You can't do that. You have to forge your way. You have to take a hammer and you forge your way to character. You see, the law of the ladder is not called the law of the escalator. It's not called the law of the elevator. Why? Because the law of the ladder, it's you got to climb it one rung at a time, and it's a slow process, and it's never easy, but it's worth the time and the effort. And that's the law of the ladder.
Wow, como siempre. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo están? ¿Cómo se sienten? Déjenme, voy a dejar de compartir. Voy a dejarla aquí guardada. Sé que apenas se andan adaptando a este nuevo horario de Sangre Campeón. Vamos a intentarlo, cómo nos organizamos en este horario para tener, pues, digo, nuestra... Ouch. Ay, aquí está.